Hello, everybody. How you doing today? Hope you're having a good day, a good blessed day. We're gonna have another sermon here called "The Evil of Gossip," and even though this is a sermon, you can still use it like in a home Bible study because there's always good material that you can sit down and study with your friends and discuss. So learn from this and do what you can with this message and learn from it and share it with others. All right, so let's get into our lesson today. It's called The Evil of Gossip. All right. And so we must be so very careful when we're talking about others. And we know that. I mean, we all should know that at least. And let's start off by saying this. Sister Suspicion went over to see Mrs. Critic the other day and said, Brother Bob has really been flirting with the women here lately. It would not surprise me if he had been stepping out on his wife. And then, as soon as their vain conversation was over, Mrs. Critic raced over to Sister Exaggerated. And during the course of their gossip, Mrs. Critic said, By the way, do you know that some people think that Brother Bob is stepping out on his wife? And you don't mean to say, replied Sister Exaggerated. Well, that's what they tell me, Mrs. Critic said. But now, by this time, Sister Exaggerated put the finishing touch on this scandal. Brother Bob had the reputation of stepping out on his wife. And Bob soon discovered that he had been doing things that he didn't do. And so that was harmful to someone. And that's how gossip works. I mean, everybody wants to say something, but they always want to expand upon it, make it a little bit better every time they say it. Let's look at gossip. As a noun, gossip is a rumor or talk of a personal, sensational, or intimate nature. And a person who habitually spreads intimate or private rumors or facts. I mean, that's what a gossip is. And sometimes gossip is just described as a trivial, chatty talk or writing. I mean, so you don't have to speak it, you can even write it. And so we understand that. And synonyms would be like gossip, blab, tattle, babble. I mean, you could just come up with all sorts of things, which they call it, but it's not good. And we know that. See, the central meaning shared by these verbs and these nouns is to engage in or communicate idle, indiscreet talk. And that is why it's so dangerous. And gossiping about the neighbor's domestic problems. I mean, you can say, okay, maybe you can't be trusted with a secret because he always blabs. And so people find that and they learn who they can trust and who they can't. I mean, if you're talking about the neighbor's domestic problem, you may hear them yelling and screaming at each other. And then all you have to do is just add in, and it wouldn't surprise me if he or she hit the other one. I mean, and you see how this stuff starts going, and then it just keeps getting better and better. I mean, and it always does. And some people are disliked by their classmates for tattling on mischief makers. And these are all definitions from the American Heritage Dictionary of the English Language, third edition. But you're right. When someone is always tattling on others, well, so and so did that, or somebody did that. I mean, people don't like the tattletale. And even in the workplace, when someone they have a problem, they run to the boss and say, "Hey, so and so did this," rather than going to that person and saying, "Hey, you made a mistake here." And they would give them the chance to fix it themselves. So you see where gossip takes us. And like we said, gossip is just like an idle word, word that does nothing. That's what it means, idle. It neither ministers grace nor instruction to them who hear it. And not only does it signify vain and empty words, but also wicked and injurious words, such as a false testimony against a neighbor. And we know how God feels about false testimony or bearing false witness. Sometimes it is really nothing more than just slander. You're going to talk about somebody. You're going to say things about somebody that's probably not true, most likely not true, but the worse you can make it sound, the more injury you think you can cause upon this person. See, in the law, we see that oral communication of false statements is injurious to a person's reputation. That's what the law considers slander. And so, if you're trying to harm somebody, that is called slander by saying false statements about them. Sometimes a false and malicious statement or report about someone. I mean, even the dictionary just says that's what it is. That's what slander is, a false and malicious statement. And it's not the truth. I mean, it's far from the truth. And so it is a falsehood or unproven rumor maliciously told for the purpose of injuring the influence or reputation of another. See, slander is a double sin. First of all, it's hatred in the heart and a lie on top of that. So, I mean, you're lying and you have hatred. And so that you can say is a double sin. All right. So why is there so much gossip going on in this world? Well, there's several reasons. And one reason is probably because the preachers don't preach enough on it. I mean, they like to hear the garbage. They like to, when the soap operas are out, they always wanted to hear all the gossip, all the dirt, all the bad things about somebody. And maybe they could use it to their advantage. Maybe they could gain an advantage by blackmail or something like that. Well, if you say that, then I'll just tell people what you did, blah, blah, and so forth. And that's what it is. It's just blah. And the problem with gossip is it's a rationalized form of self-righteousness. Always make the other person look dirtier than you, nastier than you, meaner than you, uglier than you. And guess what? You feel good about yourself. And of course, we know what the Bible has to say about that. And we'll read some scriptures in a little bit. See, some seek to elevate themselves by putting others down. And we all know this kind, especially in the workplace, this stuff happens. But you can have your moral indignation and speak out because, well, you're not like them. And so we put others down, make yourself feel better about yourself. See, gossips do not have the mentality for serious conversation. Ooh, now that hurts some people. They don't like it because they talk dirt about others, but when I say they don't have the mentality for serious conversation, I mean, it's got to be true. I mean, you got to face that. And so these people just repeat, not only just repeat, but they add to what they've heard. It's one thing to say what you heard, but it's another thing to add to it. Like we had in our example earlier. Well, it wouldn't surprise me if he stepped out on his wife. Oh, he's been stepping out on his wife. I mean, you see where that goes. And for some of us, we like to hear ourselves talk. And, there's some people, they do a lot of talking. They talk here, they talk there, and they like to hear themselves talk. And every time they tell a story, it usually gets better and better. I had an uncle that had a speech impediment, but he got to the point and he'd tell a story. And everybody laughed at it. And then, of course, the next time he got around somebody else, he started telling that same story. And this time it was better. And every time I heard this story, one story I heard about 6 times, and each time it kept getting better and better. And of course, he found out what got more laughs too. So that's why he was doing that. And so, you've heard the old phrase, men tell dirty jokes, women gossip, and vice versa. Well, yeah, I mean, that should not be by any means. And one is as bad as the other. They're all idle words. Now, preacher, here's a true story. A well-known preacher, was reported to have been in a motel with another woman. And so the person who started spreading this actually had not seen them for a while and didn't realize that the woman had lost weight, changed her hair color, and was actually the preacher's wife. And so she started getting on the campaign and telling people, well, I saw him with a strange woman, blah, blah, blah. And before long, all of a sudden the elders were questioning what was going on. And so they had to ask the preacher. And so the preacher explained, hey, this is my wife. And so that's what happens. His wife had gained and lost weight or changed her hair color. And, it happens a lot. People today, They change their hair color all the time. I know somebody changed their hair color about every 3 or 4 weeks. One week it'd be red, one week it'd be blonde, one week it'd be brunette. I mean, it just kept going back and forth. And so people can be confused if you hadn't seen them for a while. And then, of course, there was a man reported to be in a beer joint with some woman. I mean, they just happened. Well, first of all, you got the question: what were they doing in the beer joint in the first place? But anyway, it turns out that wasn't the man. The man they were claiming was in there, was actually in another state at the time. And so, I mean, so people make mistakes and they do that. And yeah, one time I saw someone in a lobby with someone that wasn't their wife. Found out later it was his sister, who he hadn't seen in a while. So, I mean, you can always jump to conclusions, and that's usually where gossip comes from. Is when you start your jumping to conclusions. Here's the interesting thing that happened in my family in Lindale, Texas, back in the 60s. The same man shows up to church 2 times and introduces a different wife each time. Oh, that was confusing to the people there. I mean, they couldn't believe he had 2 different wives. But let me tell you, that was my dad with my family and his twin brother with his family. We went in on Wednesday night, introduced ourselves, and everybody said hello. And then on Sunday, his twin brother went to church there, and he introduced his wife and his 2 daughters. And the people were really confused. And my family, our families had laughed about that quite a few times in the years to follow. Now, the question about gossip: what good does it do? I mean, first of all, what good does it do? That's a question we need to ask. See, the only time I need to report any actual evil of someone is when I'm seeking information as to how to help the person involved. And usually, as Jesus said, if you have a problem with someone, you don't go blab to everybody else, you go to the person. That's what you're supposed to do. You know, Matthew chapter 18 tells us that. See, it is best to go to the one involved and talk to them about whatever it is before talking to others about it. That's what I did when I said, hey, I saw you the other day in that lobby. Who are you talking to? He said, well, that was my sister. So you just had to drop it right there. I mean, I could have gone to I saw so-and-so with somebody. And so that would have reflected bad on me if it got out. So yeah, you got to use common sense, folks, before you start talking about others. You need to get the facts. And anyone who will gossip to me about you, they'll gossip to you or someone else about me. So gossips can't be trusted in any way. And then, of course, some people that make you wonder what they are saying about you when you leave their presence. Yeah, sometimes we get reports they said such and such about you. Sometimes we can handle it. Sometimes we know it's bad, but people who know me know better. And that's usually the case. I used to work in an environment, and somebody once said I was a boss, and somebody told somebody else that, oh, Carrie cussed me out. And the people, no, Carrie doesn't use that kind of language. So they knew the guy was lying immediately, and they just dismissed what they had to say. And so, yeah, your reputation is at stake here. And people who don't know you, they might believe something about that, like that. See what the Bible says. Now, let's get here. Leviticus 19:16 says, you shall not go about as a slanderer among your people. I am the Lord. And in Psalm 15, verse 20, you sit and speak against your brother, you slander your own mother's son. When you're speaking about others, you're basically declaring the shame that you bring upon your own mother. And Proverbs 11:13, he who goes about as a talebearer reveals secrets, but he who is trustworthy conceals a matter. And so some good advice there. Now in Proverbs 20:19, he who goes about as a slanderer reveals secrets, therefore do not associate with a gossip. Now, in the King James Version, he that goeth about as a talebearer revealeth secrets. Therefore, meddle not with him that flattereth with his lips. All right, Ezekiel 22 and verse 9 says, slanderous men have been in you for the purpose of shedding blood. And he was convicting the Israelites of what they'd done, the Jews. They basically had allowed that to take place. In Psalm 15, verse 1 through 3 says, O Lord, who may abide in thy tent? Who may dwell on thy holy hill? And the answer is, he who walks with integrity and works righteousness and speaks truth in his heart. He does not slander with his tongue, nor does evil to his neighbor, nor takes up a reproach against his friend. In Proverbs 16:28, a perverse man spreads strife, and a slanderer separates intimate friends. And then, of course, the King James says, a froward man soweth strife, and a whisperer separateth chief friends. And Proverbs 17:9 says, he who repeats a matter separates intimate friends. And that's what happens. Those passages are identical to each other. And Proverbs 18:8, the words of a whisperer are like dainty morsels. They go down into the innermost parts of the body. And that proverb is repeated once again. All right. In Proverbs 26:20 through 22, it says, for lack of wood, the fire goes out, and where there is no whisperer, contention quiets down. Like charcoal to a hot embers and wood to fire, so is a contentious man to kindle strife. The words of a whisperer are like dainty morsels, and they go down into the innermost parts of the body. So this must have been a very important statement to be said, because it was repeated twice. There's quite a few statements in the Proverbs that are repeated more than once. In Proverbs 6:16 and 19, a passage we're all familiar with, says, there are 6 things which the Lord hates. Yes, 7 which are an abomination to him. Haughty eyes, a lying tongue, hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that devises wicked plans, feet that run rapidly to evil, a false witness who utters lies, and one who spreads strife among the brothers. In James 4:11, the warning is given, do not speak against one another, brethren. And 1 Peter 2:1, therefore putting aside all malice and all guile and hypocrisy and slander. It goes on to say, you put all those aside, then long for the pure milk of the word, which is able to save your souls. Now, 2 Corinthians 12:20 says, for I am afraid that perhaps when I come, I may find you to be not what I wish, and may be found by you to be not what you wish. That perhaps there may be strife, jealousy, angry tempers, disputes, slanders, gossip, arrogance, disturbances. That was a concern back there in the first century. And guess what? It's still a concern today. In Romans 1:29 through 31, as Paul describes the wickedness of people, he says, being filled with all unrighteousness, wickedness, greed, evil, full of envy, murder, strife, deceit, and malice. What are they like? They are gossips. They are slanderers. They are haters of God. They are insolent, arrogant, boastful, inventors of evil, disobedient to parents, without understanding, untrustworthy, unloving, unmerciful. I mean, so that describes the gossips. They are without understanding. They are untrustworthy. They are unloving, and they are unmerciful. All right. Now, ask 3 questions before repeating a story. Very simple. Number 1, is it true? Well, if you haven't gone to verify that, I mean, then you're in trouble there, because that's what you're supposed to do. You need to verify it before you share it. It's like these memes on Facebook. Somebody passes something along. Oh, that must be true. And so you pass it along and find out it was a fake story or a satire story or something like that. So ask yourself, is it true? And if it is true, will it do any good to tell it? I mean, really, sometimes the reason you tell it is so that you can cause harm. That's the definition of gossip, as we said it. If it's not going to do any good and will not help anybody, then you don't need to be repeating it. And some matters just basically need to stop right there with your ears and not go any farther. And if I tell it, will it help the person? Well, chances are, if it's dirt, then probably it will not help the person. But like I said, as Jesus said, if you have an issue with your brother, you go to your brother, confirm the facts. If they're true, then talk to your brother about changing if it's something that's not good or they can cause him to lose his soul. And if it turns out the case that that's not the truth, then you probably need to turn around and go back to the person that told you and say, you know what, you told me was a lie. I mean, that'll catch their attention. That wasn't true. You said something about Brother Bob, and it's not true. And so you're spreading lies, and that's not good for your soul. So, yeah, we should take advantage and do that. And then, of course, we remember a quotation by many wise people, been in some films. And the statement is, if you can't say something good about a person, don't say anything at all. All right. We're going to be judged by our words and our deeds. That's what Jesus said. Now, Matthew 12, 36, 37. I tell you, on the day of judgment, people will give account for every careless word they speak. For by your words you will be justified, and by your words you will be condemned. And so the question now for you is, are you guilty of gossip? And if so, you're guilty of a sin that God hates and something that has hurt others. And we're not supposed to hurt others. We're supposed to help others and lift each other up and speak good to each other. So our suggestion is repent before it's too late. Try and undo the damage if you can, but chances are you won't be able to undo it. But you can apologize for it, and you can let everybody know what you are, that you have been guilty of this sin. So confess it before others, and the Lord will consider that and forgive you for it. But if you're not willing to do that, then guess what? Your idle words are going to be accounting to you, and you'll be condemned. And we don't want that to happen. So that's why we talk about this. That's why we bring these lessons, because we don't want anybody to be condemned. We don't want to give them the opportunity to do right and serve God properly. And so that's why we continue in these lessons. So think about these things, share this message with others, learn from it, share it with others, and share what you learn about this. And when you start reading the passages about idols and idle talk and babblers and things like that, you'll know exactly what it is that's involved. So that's our lesson. Consider these thoughts. If there's anything we can do for you, any questions, anything we can address, you might have a request for something, just let us know. And we'll be glad to discuss that and study. We might study privately. We might study publicly. So really anything that we can study in private, if we leave the names out, other people probably have the same problems and they can benefit from such a study. So I'm just going to let you go. You have a good day. Be safe out there and do something for God today. And Lord willing, we'll catch you on the next lesson. Bye-bye for now.